Not far from here, with a Tory government that waged war on its own people. Brought up by my mum when the Tories were attacking single mums, with an Indian dad when they said Britain was being swamped by immigrants. They came for us, they came for our jobs, and they came for our community. But we stood together, we fought together, and we won together. But now they're at it again. So when your boss earns £3.5 million and gives himself a 32% pay rise, and you ask for a below-inflation rise, you're the one to blame for inflation. And when you keep our country moving during a pandemic, and then they cut your pay, threaten your job, and refuse to get round the table to discuss it, you're the one who's supposed to be militant. Conference, this country's problem isn't militant workers, it's a militant government. And this is Tory Britain, where the foundations of a decent, secure life have been slowly eroded, leaving us with an economy we work hard for, but doesn't work for us, where the contribution of most people and most places has been written off. So in towns across the country, too many young people have to get out to get on, taking with them the spending power that once sustained our high streets and our banks and our buses and our post offices. People are left to grow old hundreds of miles from children and grandchildren, and our cities are plagued by soaring housing costs, air pollution and strain on public services. Now Liz Truss says her government will grow our economy by turning the north into Singapore-on-Sea. So they can stash their wealth in our towns and cities, pushing up the cost of housing and dodging tax, slashing taxes for big corporations so the rest of us can grind for a living in an Amazon warehouse, handing £55,000 to millionaires while people can't afford to pay their rent, feed their kids and heat their homes. More money for millionaires than the whole of the north of England. Well, I agree with Liz Truss about one thing. That is a disgrace. Conference. It's time to stand up and fight again. Not just to see off the Tories, but to build the country I've believed in all of my life, where everyone can contribute and everyone has a stake in our future. It will be about the real wealth creators, the women and men who clean our homes, work in our shops, drive our buses and deliver our mail, who produce our food, who care for our families, who teach our children, who make sure we have what we need to live every single day of our lives. To those people we say, you are the foundation of our economy. Because we believe that when people have a stake in the outcome, they work harder, they try longer, they think more creatively, and they do more. The people of our country are our great untapped asset. And Labour will tilt the balance of power back in their favour. In our first 100 days in office, we will end fire and rehire, we'll repeal the Anti-Trade Union Act, and we'll raise wages for the lowest paid. We will usher in a great rebalancing of power with wealth, security and opportunity spread across our whole country. Because they say that you can power a modern economy using only a handful of people in a handful of places in one small corner of the country. We say that's like trying to fly a jet on one engine. This country doesn't belong to a few of them. It belongs to all of us. So we'll invest to bring clean energy jobs to the industrial and coastal towns across Britain, so that young people in places that were once the engines of British industry can power us through the next century like their parents and grandparents powered us through the last. The road to net zero is paved with 1 million good climate jobs, and we'll invest to bring them to Britain. and we'll empower our brilliant leaders, Steve, Tracy, Andy, Marvin, Sean, and all of our leaders across local government with new powers, not for a few, but for all, to drive growth in every part of Britain. We'll hand power back to our people with a community right to buy land and assets, the football clubs, the historic buildings and the pubs that make a place a home, so that those with skin in the game, those who are in it for the long haul, will feel the whole system pulling in behind them. That, Liz Truss, is how you grow the economy. But if I've learned anything in the last 12 years of Tory rule, it's that progress is not inevitable. If you want to live in a country where children don't have to go to school too hungry to learn, if you want to live in a country where people with disabilities can live the richer, larger lives they deserve, if you want to live in a country where people don't have to fear growing old without dignity and warmth, if you want that country, you have to go out and fight for it every single day. So I'm asking you to get ready, because together, with every person, in every place, we're going to rebuild this country from the ground up. And I can say to you today that in government, I will make it my priority to tackle the housing crisis, because nothing is more important than a home. The Tories have turned housing into a racket, incentivising speculation and profiteering while millions languish on waiting lists in cold, damp homes. So we'll mend the deliberate vandalism of our social housing stock, because the idea of a home for life handed on in common ownership to future generations is an idea worth fighting for. Council housing is not a dirty word. So today, I can announce that we will be the first government in a generation to restore social housing to the second largest form of tenure, and this will be our mantra: council housing, council housing, council housing. We're going to rebuild our social housing stock, and we're going to bring homes back into the ownership of local councils and communities, with home ownership opened up to millions more. And for private renters, we will tilt the balance of power back to you through a powerful new renters' charter and a decent home standard written into law. Because security in your own home, the right to make your home your own, and most of all, the right to live in a home fit for human habitation is non-negotiable, because housing isn't a market, it is a fundamental human right. It's tempting, at a time of national crisis, to retreat and to play it safe. That's not who we are. It was with ambition, courage and conviction in the darkest times that out of the devastation of war, we built more council houses than any government in history. We built the NHS, the Race Relations Act, the Equal Pay Act and the minimum wage. We rebuilt our great northern cities from the ashes of Thatcherism. Conference, we led global action on climate change, and we flew the pride flag above British embassies in countries where love is a crime. A light on the hill, at home and overseas, and we are going to finish the job. Because we know we are the only party that knows that by the strength of our common endeavour, we achieve more than we achieve alone. So, Conference, let's rise to meet this crisis in a great national mission to rebuild our country. We have done it before. We're going to do it again. And we will do it the only way that counts, together.
Gosh, Conference, we've got some talent in the shadow cabinet, haven't we? Think what they could do in government. So, we're now moving on to the Scotland report. And for those of you who were here on Sunday and heard Shabana's excellent speech about how we win, she talked about the difficult conversations that we have to have if we are to convince people to come back to the Labour Party. Well, in Scotland, we've had our fair share of difficult conversations, it must be said, because we suffer at the hands of two divisive governments, one in Westminster and one in Holyrood. But there is no route to a Westminster Labour government that doesn't run through Scotland. So the progress that we are now seeing in Scotland under Anna's and Jackie's leadership should not be underestimated. Hope has returned to the Scottish Labour Party, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome to the stage now the one and only Ian Murray.
Joanna, thank you very much indeed, and I'm delighted to be introduced as the only rather than the last, which sometimes happens, which is obviously something slightly different. It's a great pleasure to speak to you today here in Liverpool. Everyone says how great Liverpool is, but coming from a Scot, you know that I really mean it, because the connection between this incredible city and my country runs so incredibly deep. Shared values, the same weather, and the feeling that a meal isn't a meal without something that hasn't been deep-fried. Even just walking around Liverpool, you can be mistaken for thinking you're in Glasgow. And for a guy born and bred in Edinburgh, I think that might just about be a compliment. Of course, the footballing success of this city has been in partnership with some fantastic Scots. None more so than Bill Shankly, born in Ayrshire but made in Liverpool. Kenny Dalglish and Alan Hansen, legends of the game, even the current Scottish national team captain. And despite what Ali McGovern MP might say, there is another team in this city, especially with the Scottish international connections of the past, like Alec Young and, of course, the present Nathan Patterson. But there's something else both Scotland and Liverpool have in common, and that is the desire to kick out this corrupt and out-of-touch Tory government. You would have heard our Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves in her wonderful speech earlier this afternoon when she spoke about the Tories' disastrous record in government. Her big announcement that Labour would fund the Acorn carbon capture and storage project in Scotland is absolutely transformative. There are few better demonstrations of a just transition with 20,000 high-quality jobs at its heart than supporting this new technology. It is something the Tories have relegated to a reserve list. And at the last Scottish Labour Party conference, I called on the SNP government to use their own Just Transitions Fund to support this cluster, but all we got from them was warm words and no action. Instead, the SNP continue to be more interested in stoking grievance than storing carbon. Conference, I want to touch on just one of the many ways in which the Tories are failing our country, and that is by failing to protect its very existence. Because the biggest threat to the Union today is really not the SNP, it's this Tory government. And what was Liz Truss's first priority? Cutting bankers' bonuses and huge tax cuts for the richest. Her administration is the most unfair, unjust and divisive government in our lifetime. When she was elected, Liz Truss tweeted, or maybe mistweeted, that she would hit the ground. Promise delivered. They give money to those that don't need it and nothing to those that do, paid for by those who can't afford it rather than those who can. So it's little wonder that many Scots see Westminster as beyond repair. And make no mistake, the SNP thrive off such disdain. They don't want to make devolution work. They don't want a Labour government. So, Conference, let me be very, very clear. The SNP are not our friends. They exist. They exist for one reason and one reason only, to rip Scotland out of the United Kingdom. And please don't forget, at the last election, Nicola Sturgeon herself encouraged people in England to vote Green, not Labour. So let me reiterate Keir's message. No deals with the SNP. None. No. Nay. Never. The only deal we want to make is directly with the Scottish people. Our party was founded by a Scot. Scotland has been integral to our movement. That will never change. Of course, we can't resolve the imbalances in our country overnight. There's a lot of work to do. But it will be the work that will be at the heart of the next Labour government. And that's why Keir asked Gordon Brown to oversee a commission into the UK's future. The Commission is tasked with clearing up and cleaning out the centre so that the United Kingdom works for every part of it. You heard that from Lisa just a few moments ago. It would be a plan for reinvigorating economic devolution, where we unleash the talents and contributions of all parts of the country. Growth for everyone, everywhere, wherever you are. And part of its purpose will not just be to try to convince Scotland to stay, as much as we should, but to make Britain such a good place to be that everyone in all corners of our country will want to be part of it. I'm pleased to announce that Gordon Brown's critical work is nearing completion and will be launched in the coming months. And Conference, let's thank Gordon Brown in his own words. Gordon, thanks for all you do. So let's send a clear message from this Labour Party to Scottish voters. If you want rid of this Tory government, then help us do it. If you want a UK government that works for Scotland, then help us elect one. If you want away from the binary choice of separation versus the broken status quo, then help us deliver it. And over the last 18 months, the change that has taken place in Scottish Labour is utterly remarkable and unprecedented. In the Scottish parliamentary election, we overshot expectations and managed to prevent an SNP majority. This May, at the council elections, we beat the Tories and got back into second place. And I believe at the general election, Scotland will help elect a Labour government, as we have done so with every Labour government since Attlee in 1945. At least then, I might have some friends down on the train. Depends who they are. Conference. The person that has made that happen deserves every ounce of the praise that he receives constantly. He's our most popular politician in Scotland and is exposing the utterly deplorable record of Nicola Sturgeon's government every single day. And it's always my great pleasure to introduce my friend and the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Anas Sarwar.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Conference, can I start by thanking my friend, and not our shadow, but our next Secretary of State for Scotland, Ian Murray. Ian, I can make you a promise that at the next general election, we will get you more colleagues. I just can't guarantee we'll get you more friends. And Conference, I want to also take this opportunity to pay tribute to and thank a person that I honestly couldn't do this job without. Our formidable Deputy Leader, Jackie Baillie. Let's hear it for Jackie Baillie. Some would say she's the real boss. When I spoke to you just over a year ago, Scottish Labour was a distant third place. And what progress we have made in a year. At the council elections in May, we knocked the Tories out of second place. And just like successes we had across the country, we now have Labour administrations in our capital city, Edinburgh, in East Lothian, East Renfrewshire, Fife, Inverclyde, North Lanarkshire, South Lanarkshire, Stirling, West Lothian and majority Labour-controlled West Dunbartonshire. And in Glasgow, we gave Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP one hell of a fright, less than 200 votes from winning. But let me be clear. The Scottish Labour Party I lead doesn't aspire for second place. We aspire for first place. And we're back in the fight, and we're in it to win it. Conference, last year we met in the aftermath of one national emergency, a pandemic that exposed the fault lines and failures in our country after more than a decade of Tory austerity. But it also revealed the strength and charity of our communities who pulled together to help their neighbours in a time of need. Again, and far too soon, those ties that bind us together have been called on once again. This cost of living crisis is a national emergency that needs a pandemic-scale response. And as I've travelled around the country, I've heard and listened to those stories. I've met the father, worried about how he's going to keep his home warm for his newborn. He's not alone. The mother, who skips meals to ensure her children don't go to school hungry, she's not alone. The family digging up their garden to plant vegetables because they can't afford the weekly shop, they aren't alone. The business owner, hit with eye-watering bills, which means they aren't sure they can stay open this winter, they aren't alone. This isn't a minority issue, it's a majority issue. Even people who would normally see themselves as comfortable are struggling to make ends meet. All the while, oil and gas companies are raking in billions of pounds in profit, and the Tories slash taxes for those who need it least. Because while Scots are struggling, neither of Scotland's governments are doing anywhere near enough to help. That is why across the UK, we demanded an energy price freeze and a meaningful windfall tax. And in Scotland, we called for an emergency cost of living act, which would freeze rents, ban winter evictions, cancel school meal debt, slash the price of public transport, and finally put all of public transport back into public hands. But given the choice, both governments preferred the comfort of the soundbite to the difficulties of solving the problem. So don't believe the Tory spin. There is no frozen energy bills. Bills will still go up, and families will pay double what they did just 9 months ago. And at the same time, they're letting the big energy companies off scot-free and cutting taxes for the wealthiest. Now, for the last year, Labour have set the agenda on the cost of living crisis, while the SNP and the Tories tried to ignore it altogether, until it became clear they couldn't. Labour called for energy price rises to be cancelled. Our opponents called for business as usual until they couldn't. Labour called for a windfall tax on the oil and gas giants. The SNP sided with the Tories and refused to vote for it until they backtracked. And when Scottish Labour called for a rent freeze, the SNP and the Greens called it unworkable until they gave in and introduced it. Conference, if this is what we can achieve from opposition, just imagine what Labour can do in government. For the last 12 years, we've had a Tory government which has actively sought to pit community against community. They wasted billions of pounds of taxpayer cash on dodgy contracts, vanity projects and giveaways to party donors. They've cut stamp duty for second homeowners and made super tax deductions for the biggest companies. They accept poverty and misery as the price worth paying for a society that redistributes wealth, but from the poorest to the wealthiest. We were right to cheer the removal of Boris Johnson because he shamed the office of Prime Minister. But let's be clear, Liz Truss is worse than Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson didn't believe in anything apart from himself. Liz Truss is a right-wing ideological Tory, and Liz Truss is more dangerous than Margaret Thatcher. Let's be clear. This is a corrupt, lying, incompetent, failing, cheating, economically illiterate, morally bankrupt shower, and the sooner we boot them out of Downing Street, the better. And the truth, and the other truth, is that far from being the great defenders of the United Kingdom, the Tories are a gift to those who want to break us apart. In Scotland, the Tories' failings have allowed the SNP to double down on their campaign of division rather than face up to their own record of failure in Scotland. More than 700,000 Scots on an NHS waiting list. That is 1 in 7 waiting for appointments and treatment. More than 10,000 children and young people waiting for a mental health appointment. 20,000 fewer businesses in Scotland today than when the pandemic began. The highest drug death rate in Europe, and our NHS on its knees despite the incredible efforts of the workforce. After 15 years in power, the SNP have squandered every chance, broken promise after promise, and left Scotland worse off than when they came to power in the first place. Instead, always someone else to blame or something else to blame. Conference, you know what I know. There is nothing progressive about Scottish nationalism. Independence goes against the values of solidarity and social justice. It's an ideology based on what divides us, not what unites us. And times of crisis should force us to look with fresh eyes at the problems we face, unite our communities and propose real solutions, ones that help us today and build prosperity in the future. That is what Labour is focused on. Because while our opponents thrive on division, we know that real change comes when you pull together. But in Scotland and across the United Kingdom, our politics has lost sight of that. I hate to break it to Liz Truss or Nicola Sturgeon. Whether you voted yes or no, whether you voted leave or remain, your bills are still going up. And for too long, we've been led by parties which want to entrench us into camps and convince us to dislike and distrust one another. But Conference, ask yourself this. Who benefits from the politics of division? It's not the family struggling to pay their bills. It's not the business fighting to stay afloat. It's not the student working to achieve their potential. It's not the people trying to buy their first home. The politics of division helps the Tories and the SNP win elections and stay in power, not to change people's lives. But it doesn't have to be that way. Our politics can be better. Our country is better. Our people deserve better. Because we in the Labour Party know we can only win by bringing people together, by giving them hope, not feeding their despair. Now, we know there is a majority in Scotland for being part of the United Kingdom, but there is also a majority for change. And crucially, in Scotland and across the United Kingdom, there is a majority to boot the Tories out of Downing Street. Our job, Labour's job, is to build the campaign and the coalition to deliver that. Not a coalition of political parties. So let me be clear, no ifs, no buts, no deals with the SNP, but a coalition of the people to beat the Tories. Working with our trade union colleagues and all those who believe in a fairer, greener Britain, it is our job to build that coalition to win. Because ultimately that's why we are here. That is what has motivated us to come from every corner of these islands to this great Labour city of Liverpool. Our task to win the next general election is to end that politics of division and demonstrate how we change our country. Because, Conference, it isn't enough that the Tories or the SNP deserve to lose. We need to deserve to win. And to do that, we need to prove ourselves worthy of the trust of that majority who want to renew our United Kingdom, so that we can protect workers and invest in public services, unlock Britain's potential to create the high-skilled, paid jobs of the future, support struggling businesses to actually grow our economy, invest in green technology to bring down energy bills and save our planet, and take on the crony capitalists who rig politics in their favour and instead make Britain a country where ambition and merit matter again. That is the difference Labour will make in power. For more than a decade, the SNP and the Tories have stoked up bitterness, division and anger, creating a politics of us versus them. But, Conference, we know those days are numbered. So a message to the occupiers of Downing Street and Bute House: the clock is ticking. So let's be prepared for what lies ahead. In the coming months and years, our opponents will get more desperate, their tone more irrational, their attacks on us more unhinged. That's because they know what we know. The next electoral contest will not be a general election. And, Conference, Labour will win the next general election, and Scotland's going to deliver the seats to get us over the line. We will deliver the seats to get us over the line. We will help deliver that Labour government, and we will help elect Keir Starmer as the United Kingdom and Scotland's next Prime Minister. Because only Labour can replace the Tories and change lives for the better. So, Conference, believe this is our moment to build a country where everyone is entitled to dignity. This is our opportunity to set our country back on the path to prosperity. This is our chance to help everyone achieve their potential. The time for divide and rule is over. The time for change is now. Labour will deliver that change and will build a better future, and we'll do it together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. My Lord, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anas. And not only do we want Keir in number 10, we want Anas as our next First Minister in Scotland.
Have you said my name?
So, Conference, our next speaker is Peter Kyle, the Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and he's just going to update us on his important work over there.
Thank you, Conference. I won't keep you too long. I know you're waiting for the football hero and Gary Neville. Conference, despite all the challenges, Northern Ireland is a thriving part of our United Kingdom. Its creative industries go from strength to strength, entertaining and thrilling people across the world. And it's a powerhouse in cybersecurity, in financial services in Europe and beyond. But the politics of Northern Ireland is hurting. The Assembly and Executive lie dormant, the divide between communities widens. Progress has stalled. This should worry all of us, and it would spur any decent government into action. But not this one. For months after the Northern Ireland Executive collapsed, There was no visit from the Tory Prime Minister, no multi-party talks in Downing Street, not even a statement to Parliament. Conference, the biggest threat to progress in Northern Ireland is not misguided policy. It's not even the lies told by this rotten government. The biggest threat is Tory neglect. And the only hope of progress is a Labour government. The problem is the Tories see problems as a chance for a row, to deepen divisions. We see problems as a chance to solve the challenges that hold us back, to create new opportunities and bring people together. That requires a leader capable of statecraft, who knows how to graft, who shows people respect even when sometimes they disagree. That's why I'm proud to have Keir Starmer as our leader. He has the skills Northern Ireland needs to succeed. Unlike Liz Truss, who creates more problems than she solves. To imagine what Labour can deliver for Northern Ireland, just look at what we did deliver. Next Easter, we mark the 25th anniversary of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, that totemic moment in time when leaders from across the political divides and communities decided a new future was possible. It was only there to grasp because a Labour Prime Minister with his Northern Ireland Secretary believed in their hearts that a radical change wasn't just possible, it was deliverable in that moment. They put in the time. They brought people together. They pulled the impossible into reach and provided the opportunities that leaders in Northern Ireland and the Irish government had the courage to seize. Conference, we salute those who made peace possible with a Labour government. We thank Tony Blair and the remarkable one-off talent of Mo Molam. We also recognise the courage of David Trimble, who we said goodbye to this summer, and John Hume. They led their communities into an era defined by peace and growing prosperity. You know, Labour bequeathed the Tories a Northern Ireland that was increasingly at ease, but they squandered it with their lies and neglect. It was the Tories who proposed, drafted, negotiated and signed the Northern Ireland Protocol into international treaty. Yes, there are problems with it, but they can be solved. We know that negotiation is the only path forward. But a year has already been wasted, a year in which politics in Northern Ireland has stumbled and the Tory government in Westminster looked the other way. A Labour government would deliver rapid deals with the EU on the flow of goods, the sharing of data, and making it easier for agricultural products to move around the UK and the island of Ireland. We'll fight hard for our interests using statecraft, diligence and graft, not the Tory way, which always somehow seems to end up by breaking the law. The difference in approach and ambition between the Tories and Labour, it couldn't be starker. Labour delivered peace, prosperity and confidence to Northern Ireland. The Tories can't even negotiate a prawn sandwich across the Irish Sea. Conference, the people of Northern Ireland, they deserve better. And with Keir Starmer and a Labour government, they will get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. So, before we move on, conference, I'll ask for your indulgence for just a second, because on this at this conference, I've been on a mission. Jackie's little cat passed away a year ago, and she still misses her. So I've been trying to persuade her to visit the SSPCA rehoming centre that is actually in her constituency, just to have a look. And there are a number of feline friends currently in the rehoming centre that need a home. So if everybody thinks that Jackie should pop into the rehoming centre this weekend, oh, say aye. So we're going to return to votes at the end of today's session, but first we have a very special guest who I know you've all been waiting for. If you can, just stay in your seats and bear with us for just a couple of moments whilst we rejig the stage ever so slightly, and I will leave you in the very safe hands of our leader, Keir Starmer.
Conference, please welcome to the stage Lucy Powell, Keir Starmer and Gary Neville.
It's like coming out of the tunnel.
It's daunting.
Brilliant.
Wow.
This is Liverpool. We've never had anything like this in Liverpool before.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Great. Good.
Thank you, everybody. What a lovely welcome. A lovely welcome to Keir Starmer and Gary Neville. So, Keir, look, this is Gary's first conference. What does it mean to you to have Gary here at this conference this week?
Well, look, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here, Gary. And you can see the reception you just got. I said to Gary, this is like coming out the tunnel at the beginning of the game. It's absolute. You can see the reception, and you know, and this is Liverpool.
Give that to me.
That's what usually happens in Liverpool.
That isn't what I meant by Liverpool. Gary's got a thing
way.
about Liverpool, as you know. But it's really fantastic that you're here. It's really been noticed. I think everybody appreciates it. And the points you've been making, the Mirror interview you did yesterday, all the stuff you've been doing today, absolutely spot on, because the politics is spot on. So, Gary, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you. Please shake my hand.
Gary, how are you feeling about being here? What does it mean to you to come here for the film? I know you're a bit sort of nervous with this political crowd, but you're all going to give Gary a great welcome. What does it feel like to be here?
It's a privilege, a little bit daunting. It's the best reception I've ever had here in Liverpool. Usually when I see Reds in Liverpool, I'm in big trouble. No, but it's great to be here. Obviously, over the last couple of years, I've chosen to speak out because I don't believe staying silent is good enough anymore, particularly when we see things that we don't like and that are wrong, and I have an audience and a platform. And joined the Labour Party last January.
Manchester Central. Gary's the newest member of Manchester Central CLP. First-time delegate.
You should have said, yes, first-time delegate.
Yeah. Yeah, so here we are. Let's give it a go.
No, it's really fantastic, Gary. Round of applause for Gary.
Now, look, what not many people know about you, Keir, is that you're very, very keen on football and you play football. You're an aspiring midfielder, is that right?
Aspiring, thank you. I think I'm at the other end.
Have you played a game this week?
I play every Sunday, which is fantastic. We had a staff game last Wednesday.
Oh, really?
Which was very good. But I think my inner aggression came out, sort of battering people out of the way, trying to get to the ball. But it was fantastic, yeah, with the staff team. Brilliant.
I'd love to see that. And, I mean, Gary, come on, you got any advice for an aspiring midfielder? What are his prospects for getting signed?
Everybody in the room who's ever played with me is thinking absolutely no chance.
Make sure you play left of centre midfield.
Yeah.
And you've got to deliver some nice passes to that left wing because they're a little bit noisy.
Yeah.
Very good.
Sorry.
And look, as someone who was previously had a very big career before you came into politics, I mean, what's your advice to Gary? Should he come into politics? I mean, or what's your advice to Gary as somebody who's had a...
I think that's being answered. Look, what I'd say, I mean, I came into politics quite late. I did other things. Obviously, I was a lawyer. I worked in Northern Ireland. I was the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I think coming in later in life gives you something which you don't necessarily have if you come in earlier, because it gives you huge experience, knowledge of how to resolve different situations. Also, you know, out there in the world beyond the political bubble, most people see problems and their instinct is to go and fix it. And make things better, and we lose a bit of that in politics. So when you look at the experience you've got, you know, captain, playing, bringing people together, that is an incredibly powerful thing to have in politics. It's what we need in our party sometimes, but not this conference. And it's, But it's what we need for the country. At the moment, you know, I think the country feels very, very divided. We've seen the true colours of the Tories last Friday. Their absolute ideology came out. You know, they're going to run the country on the basis that the only thing that matters is make the rich richer, and somehow one day some of that might trickle down to other people. So there's a really big divide here. There's a fight to be had, and you know, you enjoy that competition. Just imagine that the Tories are, I don't know, Liverpool Football Club.
Who do you fear more?
I said that I got asked that question actually. Would I Liverpool or the Conservative Party? And I actually chose Liverpool, which is saying something. Because whilst we see football differently, people in Liverpool work hard, they want a fair and equal future, they want opportunity and belief, and they are aligned with, I suppose, Mancunians and the rest of this country. I don't believe it's just a northern issue, this.
No, definitely.
No, it definitely isn't. It definitely isn't.
Now, just before we move on to some other politics, can we just have a moment on the Lionesses? Because what a summer that was. You went to a few games here.
Yeah. They were amazing, and for someone who in '96 was in Wembley singing, you know, football's coming home and it didn't come home.
Sorry.
It was there again. But
I was playing, what a bit awkward.
yeah, but it was. And then, you know, again, we were trying to do that. And then this year, it was brought home by the Lionesses. It was absolutely amazing. And against Germany. Absolutely fantastic. But Vic, my wife here, and I went with our children to the semi-final in Sheffield. And it was an absolutely incredible atmosphere. The place was full. It was really brilliant. Brilliant football, brilliant determination. The team were playing like a team, really together. But what really struck me is our daughter is 11, and she's interested in football, but not that interested in football. And she was just bewitched by this. She was absolutely... I watched her face as she was watching them playing, particularly at the end when they had won and they were still on the pitch. And this was a young girl looking, and the sort of aspiration to do it was there in her. And that's, I think, the best thing is, you know, that sense that this is a brilliant game played by the women. We need equal access, by the way. We've got to fight this fight for equal access for women, because the leg... I just got to hold the trophies here. Have you seen it?
I've not seen it. No,
Right.
I've never seen an international trophy.
Well, it's here, and I went, and they asked me to hold it. I thought, blimey, after they've won it and done all that hard work, I might not pick it up and drop it, sort of Tony Adams style. But it was absolutely amazing what they've done. But the legacy should not just be that in a cabinet somewhere. It's got to be young women having the chance, an equal chance, to play football.
I mean, when you think... The question gets asked sometimes, why should the men game fund the women's game? And many of you will be aware, many of you may not be aware, that in the 1920s, the men's game, the FA, stopped women playing football for 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why the men's game now, having set the women's game back so far, needs to invest heavily in the women's game. And there's a review at the moment. My mum was stopped playing in the 1970s for a school team.
Really?
Yeah. And my brother obviously was the manager of the England women's team for 4 years. My sister has fought for equal funding from Sport England for netball for many, many years. How can we be in 2020 still fighting for funding, for equal pay, for equal investment into women's sports? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that's the legacy.
Just before we leave football, I want to just say that, and you'll have done this, Gary, I went to Anfield just 2 or 3 months ago to go and look at the memorial to the 96, now of course 97. And it was incredibly moving, an incredible reminder of what happened that day. And I think inevitably, just because our children are the age they are, our boy is 14, he comes to football with me. And every time I went down the list, it's in rows, and saw because the age is on it, the age 14, my heart just stopped. It's such a powerful memorial. And that's why we've got to change the law. And we will change the law to make sure that that never happens again. There must be justice for the 97, and we will do that as soon as we get into government.
That's a really important point here in Liverpool this week. And so talking of regulation in football, I know this is one of your favourite subjects as well, Gary. There's been some rumours this week that maybe now the government might backpedal on this idea of a statutory independent regulator in football. Tell us why it matters and why you think that the Tories would be wrong to backpedal on that.
Well, they would be wrong. I mean, I'm surprised, I have to say, because I believe that it's a simple win for Liz Truss and her government. The last election, part of the Conservative manifesto, was that they would do a fan-led review. Tracy Crouch, a Conservative MP, has done a brilliant job with the panel in bringing that fan-led review forward with recommendations that I think are appropriate for the whole game. And it's got cross-party support. This isn't actually a Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative argument. Actually, everybody seems to be on the same page because football clubs up and down the country are so important to the fabric of the communities around them. And I have to say, I'm unsure as to where those rumours emanated from last week. I don't know why you would even think to tinker with that, because the seats that are going to be fiercely contested in a couple of years in the general election, a lot of those towns that ultimately will be fought over have football clubs in them. And the EFL, the professional game, the semi-professional game, the supporters are all behind the implementation of a regulator. There is only the elite in the Premier League that aren't. It's a little bit of a representation of society. Vested interest and greed will try and control where the money goes. And the reality of it is it shouldn't happen in society and it shouldn't happen in football.
Yeah. And Keir, I mean, you always make a point of going to some of these football clubs when you go out on visits. We've seen what happened in Bury, in Derby, Wigan. I mean, what do you, you've not said much publicly on football regulation. What do you think?
No, whenever I go out on visits, I always try to go to the local football club because the football club is very often the centre of the town, of the place, a source of great pride. And a lot of them are really struggling. I mean, Bury, now back up and running, but, Wigan, there's so many examples of football clubs that have struggled because of the finance, because of the lack of an independent regulator. But Gary's right. Tracy Crouch's report was accepted across the board. All political parties thought this was the right thing to do, independent regulator. The political will is there. So if this is introduced, it will go through. I am concerned now with the change of Prime Minister that it won't. Because I think her instinct, I may be wrong about this, but I think her instinct is that anything that looks like regulation, anything that looks like, in another part of the forest, taxation, is a bad thing, and therefore she will pull away from it. So I think it's now more at risk in the next 18 months or so till the next general election than it was before. But we will run with it. We will run with it, we'll push the government on it, because we need an independent regulator. And there is that consensus there, so I hope they push it forward, and if they do, we will support it, and it will go through, because it really matters. If it doesn't, we'll do it ourselves when we've booted them out of office.
Fantastic. That's a great commitment. And what more can fans do, can people in this audience do to kind of push that cause as well, do you think?
I think write to your local MP, really important. I think that would be the most important thing that you could do. And I think you'll actually get support from your local MP, whether you live in a Conservative, Lib Dem or Labour constituency. You will get support because they recognise it's the right thing to do.
Brilliant. Right. Now we're going to move on to a bit of politics. I know that one of the things that you two have bonded over the last few months was your, should we say diplomatically, dislike of Boris Johnson that you both mutually share. So what are you making of Liz Truss so far then, Gary? Tell us what you really think.
Look, the first thing to say is that obviously she has the seat, and it's really important that we all know what the end goal is here. When you have a winning team, you have aligned goals, and that means you've got to put your personal interests aside. You may not agree with every single current Labour policy. You may not even agree with certain aspects of what are going on, but you have to make sure that there is laser focus in this next 18 months, 2 years, to make sure that there is a change. This is a tired, failing government. It is. And when you have someone, either in a football club, in a business, or in a political party, that are in power for too long, you get this level of division, tiredness. They don't know, they can't see the wood for the trees. And in terms of Liz Truss, I mean, obviously she's only been in a couple of weeks. It's been an outstanding beginning, hasn't it? She's tanked the pound lower than my reputation in Liverpool. I mean, what worries me is, I know that there were the tax cuts last week. There was no high net worth, wealthy person on over £150,000 a year wanting a tax break last week, but they got it. And yet they did it. But that didn't really tell me the most about them. What worried me, not what worried me the most, but what told me the most about them was that last week, Kwasi Kwarteng, in his new house, went and knocked on Liz's door and said, what I think we should do this week in the midst of a cost of living crisis, energy crisis, people worried about paying their bills, people worried about food, I think we should remove the cap on bankers' bonuses. How can you possibly, in a million years, think that way? I think they're the only man and woman in this country that thought that would be a good idea last week. And we're still fresh in the mind from the banking crisis 15 years ago, and yet they still went and did it. And I have to say that there's this suggestion that, you know, Liz Truss is a woman who goes for what she really wants, but she was once a Liberal Democrat, and she was once a Remainer. She's now a Tory, and she's now a Brexiteer. And I got told last week that, we got told last week, I think it was maybe you that exposed it, Keir, that the reason that she didn't give the burden of the energy costs to the energy companies was because she once worked for Shell. I mean, on that particular point, I saw also that they froze the alcohol prices. I mean, do we assume that she once had a part-time gig at Bargain Booze or something? I mean, so from that point of view, I have to say that the time has come for them to leave office. It really has. The general election can't come sooner. And we can sit in here from whatever background you come from. We were brought up by our parents and our grandparents to know what right and wrong was, to know that you look after people, you treat people well, and they don't do that. They don't do that.
Okay, so you've got rid of Boris. You actually got rid of one Prime Minister. How are you going to get rid of, what's your approach to Liz Truss and getting rid of her?
Well, let's just enjoy for 1 minute that we have got rid of Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
You know, we spent many hours talking about Boris Johnson and why he needed to go. And so the moment he went, I mean, he did try and cling on. Do you remember that last day? Resignation's coming and he's putting a new cabinet together. Even more than... he's still hanging in the wings. But look,
to the table.
He is gone. And now we have Liz Truss. I mean, he was all about character in the end. It was character that brought him down. She is all about ideology, about this ideology. And it's very simple. It is that the way you grow the economy, the way this country go forward, is about those at the top. That's why she thinks it's perfectly all right to get rid of the cap on bankers' bonuses. I mean, imagine saying to someone this winter, when they're struggling to pay their bills, what is the one thing that you're going to do to help me pay my bill? Take the cap off bankers' bonuses. I mean, really? And what they did last week is this theory. And this is not just funny for an afternoon like this. This is really dangerous politics. The dangerous politics that really believes that the people who create the wealth in this country are only those at the very, very top. And therefore, if you make the rich richer and the super rich even richer than that, that is the way that you grow the country. It's proved not to work. It's immoral. It leaves out of account that those that actually grow our economy are those that do the hard graft day in, day out, those that go to work, those that drive the buses, those that drive the trucks. People working in factories, in hospitals, in shops, engineers, software engineers, school teachers, those who work in our hospitals. These are the people who actually build our economy, grow our economy, and they deserve to benefit from the growth in our economy. And the stark, the difference now between where they are, the top, only the top, and Labour, from the bottom up and the middle out, is so, so important. Although, as I say that does sound a bit like my Sunday football, I have to say.
That sounds good. Now, when you were preparing to do that Mirror interview yesterday, you asked me if you could swear, didn't you? Do you want to just explain this and then...
Well, yeah, ordinarily I would swear, it wouldn't be a problem for me, but I thought in a political audience, can I do that? And so I actually gave the line to the Mirror political editor. I said, they are taking the piss, this lot, aren't they? And then I thought, do you know... And then I thought, I'm not sure, can I say that? Can I change it to Mickey? Take the Mickey out of you? Not realising that actually Keir had already used taking the piss earlier on. I thought, I can't be diluting my language when Keir's actually gone even further. Yeah, so, it generally is true though, isn't it? I mean, we get to a point now whereby if you're a nurse that's thinking of going on strike, then the accusation against you will be that you shouldn't go on strike because people will die because you're going to go on strike that day. Not the fact that it's been underinvested in for 12 years. And that the fact that... When you think of the people that are working in education, in transport and nurses and in our NHS, do you think those people want to go on strike? It's their absolute last resort to have to do that. Or do we just accept that people are just going to continue to not look after the people who were clapped for 12 months during a pandemic, and now we're not going to give what would be the sort of, if you like, correct incremental pay rises to? So for me, I think we're in a society now which is quite dangerous because we have large parts of our media that also support the messages against our workers, against people who, to be fair, are trying to prop up our services, against this level of underinvestment that's occurred. We don't even talk about health and education anymore. We don't even talk about health and education anymore because they're off the agenda, because actually there is an element of this government that in some ways these crises that have occurred, pinballing about from crisis to crisis, they quite, not saying that they enjoy them, but it gives them cover against the level of incompetence that's going on in the rest of the country.
I think on top of all that, they're now making a bad situation worse because what they did on Friday was a massive gamble. It's like two gamblers in a casino sort of chasing a losing run, but they're not gambling their own money. They're gambling our money. And, when the markets react in the way we've seen on Friday and then again today, this is not some abstract thing. This is investors who are investing huge amounts of money who think that what was said on Friday is really risky and it's affected their investment decision. This is for real. It's not just one of those funny graphs you look at. You think, well, I don't quite understand, but it looks as if it's going down pretty quickly. This is investors taking decisions that are going to have an impact. They're going to impact those nurses, those teachers, because this will mean mortgage rates going up, prices going up, making a bad situation even worse than it is. And that's why what was done on Friday was absolutely the wrong thing politically, but it's also the wrong thing economically. And let them never, ever claim again to be the party of sound finances. Never again. Never again. Try getting a funding proposal through Rachel Reeves. Her fiscal rules are absolutely like iron. And that's the 10th breach of a fiscal rule by them. And the other thing, let them never, ever claim again to be the party of aspiration, because they are choking the aspiration of millions of people in this country on the basis that they don't matter. It's only the people at the top.
So one thing people would see about you, Gary, is that you're a winner. You've been part of lots of winning teams. How do you think that we can ensure we win that next election and we change this country for the better? What would your advice to us all here today be?
I think remain laser focused and aligned behind the single goal, which is to remove this Conservative government and put everything else aside and focus on that alone. That alone. Get behind... Get behind Keir Starmer.
Absolutely.
He's a...
Right.
This is a serious politician, someone who's headed up a major department in the CPS, someone who is trustworthy and has integrity, all things that this current government don't have. And not only this current government damaging us in our country, our relationships with our partners in Europe and around the world are broken and shattered. And they've burned their bridges with our partners in Europe and around the world. And we need to rebuild our relationships. We need to rebuild our reputation. And that is not going to happen under a Conservative government.
Absolutely. And Keir, how confident are you feeling? Apprehensive? Complacent? I know you're not complacent because you lecture us every week at the Shadow Cabinet, but you know, how confident are you feeling about the general election?
Well, just picking up on Gary there, because he's talking about the international reputation, this is true in terms of, we used to be a respected voice internationally, and we're not anymore because of what this government has done. I think it goes even deeper than that, because I think what's happened in the last 12 years is that because they haven't delivered, because they've made promises that they didn't actually ever meet or arguably ever want to meet or intend to meet, there's been a loss of trust in politics, a loss of faith in politics, a sense that politics doesn't make a difference. We've got to restore that. We've got to give people the belief that politics is a force for good and make a change for them. And so there's a huge amount of repair work to be done. In terms of how we feel at this conference, and Gary, I'm glad you've come to this conference because there is a mood at every conference. You can feel it. And the mood at this conference is one of confidence that we've done hard work in the last 2 years to change our party, to remake our party, to make it face the public, and that we're ready to deliver. And that sense that people are now looking to the Labour Party for the answers to the huge challenges that so many millions of people face. That is what's here at this conference, the sense of coming together, the sense that we are really a government in waiting, and that we now have our chance at this conference to set out our ideas for the country. That confidence is worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. Very good. Okay. So just before we go, now the other thing that I know Keir really likes to talk about, Arsenal and a bit of football. Okay. Yeah. So
only a few voices there, I know.
Gary, what do you think are the top of the league? Arsenal's chances of winning the Premier League this season. What do you think?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I've been quite supportive so far, but that's where it ends, I think.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Arsenal are doing very well. I think I like Arteta a lot, actually. I thought at the end of last season when he didn't qualify for the Champions League, I thought that would be a real problem for him, but they responded well, and they're going to have a pretty good season, I think, but they won't win the league. City will win the league. Your lot will win the league.
Sorry.
Unfortunately.
Look, what would it mean to you, really, if Arsenal won the Premier League here? Come on.
Oh, it'd be absolutely fantastic. And no, we can still say we're top of the league at the moment, so we keep. But we've got, you know, it's a brilliant team. He's got really good new signings, I think.
Who's the best? Who's the best new signing?
Well, I mean, I'd say Saliba, but he's actually not a new signing, but it's his first season sort of on show for us. But he's been absolutely fantastic. Jesus is brilliant for us, fantastic. So, you know, let's hope it's their season. I remember, you know, the best moment in football ever was here in Liverpool in '89 when Michael Thomas put that second goal in to win the league for Liverpool, for Arsenal. It's absolutely brilliant.
Right, we've got a couple of last quick questions. Favourite sporting moment of all time, Gary?
Mine or?
Yes, yours.
I will go with the treble in '99.
As you do.
Yeah. all the United fans. We might be in Liverpool, but there's plenty of United fans. And Keir, was yours that one
That's
that you were
just brilliant, isn't it? What's it? The treble in '99.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, Gary. This is why we're so pleased to have you. It's absolutely incredible. I remember last time we did this in Manchester, and we were just about to go on, and they read out all of your sporting achievements, and it's absolutely incredible. And I think tribute to you for all of that. And I wish we could all sit up and say the treble in '99. Wouldn't it be so brilliant?
I know.
It's that Michael Thomas goal in the 92nd minute in Anfield here in '89. Absolutely brilliant. Ended an 18-year run for Arsenal. Absolutely brilliant.
Excellent. Right, last question, because we've all got to go. You've all got fringes to go to. This is.
What are these fringes?
Don't go.
What are these fringes people keep talking about?
Gary thought it was fringe as in bad on the
I was
fringe.
Are people sneaking away and snidey talking here?
So, I'm going to tee it up for you here now. Who do you think was England's best ever defender of all time?
No.
Well, Gary's right up there, but I've got to say Tony Adams.
Yeah. And who's your favourite ever politician of all time, Gary? No.
Look, I did mention you, Gary.
It will be Keir when he wins in a couple of years.
Right. That's it from us. You've all got fringes to go to, parties to go to. Don't have too late night. Can you all thank our guests? Can you thank Gary Neville and Keir Starmer?
Thank you. Thank you. Lucy, thank you.
Oh, no, well done. You did really well.
Gosh, conference, what an afternoon, eh? So, if people can stay in the hall just a couple of minutes more, we've got some votes just to finalise proceedings today. If you can take your seats, please, delegates. If you are leaving, can you do so quietly so we can crack on? And I won't keep you for longer than necessary. Okay. First, we have the reference back of the Sutton and Cheam reference back on the Future Where Families Come First Policy Commission report. So can I ask for all those in favour of the reference back, please? And those against?
Very difficult to tell. Do you want to take the vote?
Sorry? Okay, so sorry about this, colleagues. Someone's asked me to take the vote again. I think there was still a bit of murmuring as people left the hall. So it's the reference back from Sutton and Cheam CLP on the Future Where Families Come First Policy Commission report. So all those in favour of the reference back? And those against?
I'd say clearly, but it was clearer than last time.
Yeah, I think that is carried. Okay, so now